Thanks for joining me. I'm Don May. Today is going to be a little different. The reason I say it's a little different because I got to talk about something that wipes people out, that keeps deals from happening and keeps you from purchasing quality real estate. The name and title of this particular video is called Greed Kills. Fair and simple. I mean, you don't have to listen to Gordon Gekko to know that greed kills, okay? So we don't want any of that. But here's what I want to share with you. I have multiple students who follow and do the things that I train them to do and so forth. And I've got a couple that constantly are coming to me saying, I had it all the way there and it didn't close. I had it almost there and it didn't close. I got to examining their transactions on why they're not closed. I said, let's sit down and go over it one by one. And here's what I discovered. And by the way, it was the exact same problem that I personally had as many as 25 plus years ago. And so not only did I recognize it in this new changed dynamic marketplace, but it was the exact same elements of what was causing it. So it was pretty easy for me to identify, very easy for me to correct, and then they immediately went, oh my gosh, I see it and I know how to fix it. So that's where experience comes in as well. So when you're out there and you got all these deals going, you got things in escrow and they're just not happening. It's just not closing. You're just not getting the deal you were supposed to be getting. It's pretty simple to figure out why. When you back up, put yourself in the other guy's shoes, and then reevaluate how he's hearing what you're saying, and you'll learn right away where the block is that's not causing it to close so you're able to purchase that house. Let's think of it this way. I'm coming to you. I'm Don May, I'm the buyer. I'm coming to you. You're, Mary Smith, just a name I'm putting out there. And you say, I want you, Don, to buy my house. So I'm sitting there. And I look at you and I say, okay. And we make our deal, whatever our deal is. And in that deal, I have no down payment. I have no first month's payment. I have no interest rate. I have no qualifying FICO score needed. I have no bank approvals. I don't have to go to the bank. I'll take it in the condition that it is in. I'm going to pay you a very, very small amount of money for your equity for the purchase of this property. And I'll be the exclusive guy who will ever be able to buy the note that you're carrying on this property if and when you should ever elect to sell it to somebody else because you want fast money. And I'm going to want to have a heavy discount and having to give you additional money up front in advance of when it's actually due if you need the money. And I'm not going to take it in my personal name. I'm going to put it into my trust. And there's just no recourse. So I've got the perfect purchase. That's like a free house. Because the tenant's going to move into it. They're going to make the payments. They're going to pay me. And then I'm going to pay you. And I'm going to keep the spread in between. So I get a free house. That's what that shakes out like. Well, come on, man. If I'm in the other person's shoes and I'm looking at that deal, I'm going, sure is a great deal for you. Just because you can do it, just because you can write it in a contract and they'll agree to it, doesn't mean you have to or should do it. Make your agreements massaged to fit both of you. Again, if your seller doesn't go, thanks, Don, with a huge smile shaking your hand, really there's no deal. If they go, well, I hope all this really works out. I just don't know what to think. Those deals don't stick. Those deals fall out. Because 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, they get to thinking it and they get seller's remorse. And then somebody comes along and says, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that. You should have done this. All that happens. Happens all the time. So if you know how to lock your purchase down tight, and then go back and relock it down tight again so it doesn't fall out and they get seller's remorse, then what happens is you got a solid relationship. So when someone says, I got a no interest transaction, I bought it at 70 cents on the dollar with no bank qualification. Can you do this? Yes. Do you have to do it on every deal? No. Make the deal work where it's profitable. I've had many guys say, I'll never do a no interest deal. They say it right out, no interest? Absolutely not. Listen. A guy comes to me and says, I want $100,000 for my property. Okay. I agree to give him $500 a month, no interest. And I will buy his house for $100,000. And he says, no, I got to have interest. And I go, okay, well, what do you want? He goes, well, I got to have at least 4%. Well, 4%? Wow, we're talking American money here, right? Yeah, 4% interest on $100,000? He goes, yeah. Then I can't give you more than $80,000 for the house. That's okay, but I want my 4%. Case closed. You took off 20 grand, you give him 4%. Is it a good deal? Yes. Does it still work? Yes. You see, you don't have to be so creative where you got to get every single minute detail to absolute perfection to work for you just because you know you can do it and you know how to do it. It's not necessary. Make the deal, the transaction, the purchase work for both of you. Not always does no interest work. I strive for it, but it doesn't always happen. Not always do I get no down payments. Not always do I get the first few months payments waived. Not always do I get to buy it subject to the existing financing. Sometimes I have to pay it off or get a new loan from some private party and then let the seller carry the balance. I mean, there's different things that you can do, but the key is this. Don't lose a deal where you're going to make $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on a single house because the greed factor steps in and you're not willing to let a little of that go. Many times I've had opportunities to make $30,000 on one house, and because the seller was a little squeamish, I would back it off and make them feel better, and I'd only make $20,000 on the house. Did I give up 10? No, I didn't give up anything. I made $20,000. But when you thought about what I could have made, should have made, who cares? Who cares? Get on to the next house. Don't do that to yourself. You know, I talked to a guy named Bob, and Bob has a whole bunch of houses. And he came to me and goes, I got one plan, Don. And I go, what's that? He goes, I sell like this. And I go, what does that mean? He goes, 10, 10, 10. And I'm going, wow, that's my philosophy. But he goes, yeah, I want 10% down for 10 years and 10% interest. And I go, wow, that's pretty good. I'm pretty sure a lot of guys would do that. I said, is that what you start out at? Is that exactly what you want? He goes, that's exactly what I want. I never budge. Never budge. I said, never budge. I love it when people say never. Because never say never, because it just doesn't work. And he goes like this. He goes, I want 10% down for 10 years at 10% interest. And I go, great. What do you want for the house? He goes, well, price is immaterial to me because I want 10% down, 10% interest for 10 years. That's his box. That's his thinking capacity. Okay. So I adjust all my numbers and what I'm willing to pay him to take into account that I'm paying a high rate of interest for a long period of time with a pretty good down payment. Who cares? So he wants $100,000 for the house. That means I might give him $50,000. Does that work? Sure. I've had guys say, Don, I want 15% interest for 5 years, and I'll sell you this house with no down payment. You know what I do? I stick my hand out and I say, sold. Really? And they're like, really? And I go, sure, sold. I'm willing to pay you 15%. I'm willing to give you exactly what you want. You write it all up. That's our deal. And then you know what I do? I make sure I get my deal in the purchase price of it because of the high rate of interest. I might pay that for 1 or 2 or 3 months, and I'll bring in a private party, and I'll just take the whole guy out and get it down to 3 or 4% interest. I might call up a guy with a 401k and say, hey man, you want to make 5% on the money you're getting nothing on? And I put him as the new lender on the property and take that seller out. Because who wants to pay 10 when I can pay 4? I call a guy up that's got a Roth IRA self-directed and say, hey listen, you want to buy an option on my property? And he goes, sure. I said, okay, well, here's the option consideration, which is a fee you pay me to make the deal. And I said, and then you take that guy out for cash. And then I'll sell you the property and I'll carry the balance myself. I know it sounds complicated right now, but down the road when we're dealing more, it's not. And you know what? The guy goes, you got it. So the guy who wants 15% interest thinking he's going to retire on my stupidity, he got that 15% rate of interest for 1 month. You see, there's many ways to skin a cat. Just remember, the greed factor of trying to get every single element tucked into your armpit and in your pocket as your profit will wipe you out. Be flexible, move, shift, sway, kind of go with the times. Let things be smooth and stress-free and relaxed so that the transaction happens and the property becomes yours. Thanks for listening.